Welcome everyone. Welcome to another virtual masterclass. This time with a wonderful artist from Mani Mozart, Mr. Jeffrey Kainer, who is the principal flute player of the Philadelphia Orchestra and also teaches at the Curtis Institute. And we have three of our flute students from Advanced Orchestra that will be playing for Mr. Kainer. And I wanted to introduce to you Mr. Kainer now. Maybe we'll see him on the screen. There he is. Mr. Kainer,
Hi.
thank you so much for being here and for having putting some time for our students here. How are things in Philadelphia?
I'm actually in New York,
Ah,
and things are, gosh, the way they've been for the past several months. Things
I
are a little
know.
more active now because we've moved into phase one.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Well, I hope the spike doesn't catch us all in the fall. A lot of
yeah,
people are relaxing too much, I guess. But
yeah,
hopefully, we'll continue to improve and be able to play together again.
yeah. I hope
I
so.
know it's really hurting the arts. But anyway, as I mentioned, we have three flute players, and let me introduce Samantha Petrelsky, who is a soon to be a junior. Samantha's been with us for a little while, and hi Samantha, how are you?
I'm good.
Good. Samantha, how long have you been with us with the MMYO?
Since seventh grade, I think. So four.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, 4 years or 4 or 5 years. Well, I meet Mr. Jeffrey Kainer, and I'll leave you two alone, and I'll come back for when you're done. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay, hi, Samantha.
Hi. It's nice to meet you.
You too. You were going to play the onager.
Yes.
Uh, okay, shall we just start right in so we can get as much time on it as possible?
Sure.
Bravo. Sounds beautiful. Uh, Samantha, can you tell the audience what this is about?
Sure. So, Danse de la Chèvre is translate to Dance of the Goat, and the storyline is that the goat is waking up. It's just winter. The winter snow has melted away, and it's spring, and he's dancing. Um,
Ah,
yeah.
great. So this piece is very evocative. You can really imagine all of that easily while you're listening to it. So let's start again at the beginning. You know, one of the most difficult things to do in this is to have a really clean legato at the beginning here. So the connection between all of these intervals has to really be as smooth as possible. Like it's hard to go from that D to the B. Can you try that? See, it doesn't sound quite smooth. There's like a click between them. Try it again. That was better. Okay, that was better. Now try from the beginning and get that same smooth connection between every note. All right, so overall it was much better than the first time, but now you went back to the between the D and the B. It wasn't as good as it was the way you played it the last time. So, you know, you can check yourself. You can sort of recalibrate, relearn what you want to hear. Play the B, and then just play an A. Just like that. So it's super easy to make that a clean legato, but then you have to do it from the D. So if you do your B, they all have to sound equally smooth. And playing from the B to the A or B to C is no problem. But then to C sharp is more complicated, and then to D is quite difficult. All right, so use that method of doing something easy first, and then so that you know what it feels like, and then do the harder thing. Okay, now let's go on to the second phrase. Uh, you took a breath after the E in the second bar. I like that. Why did you do that there? Oh, I've lost you. Samantha, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. You've disappeared. Are you? There you are. I see you, but I can't hear you. Say something. Can you hear me? You can hear me? I, okay, but I can't hear you. This is so frustrating with this having to do these. It says that, okay, say something. I can't hear you. Can you hear me,
Hello?
Harna?
I
Oh,
can hear you.
there you are. Now I
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that.
No, that's what happened so that we know in case it happens again. Do you know
I don't
what
know, it
happened?
just turned off. No, I have no idea. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So what we were talking about that breath that you did, and I like the breath that you did better than the breath that's written in the music here. Um, and the reason I like it better is because the one that somebody put in the music is on a crescendo. And the way you did it, you could do the crescendo rather than stopping to breathe.
Yeah.
So that was a good choice. Um, then when you get to the tempo vif,
Hmm.
it really wasn't any faster. Can it be the same tempo as when you get to the dance?
Mm, yeah, it can.
Yeah, it should be. So
Okay.
let's try from the F where that other breath is.
Okay.
Yeah, but keep everything short.
Should I start from the F again?
Yeah, no,
Or
just from the fast. So even the G. See, let's do everything short. That's right. So you see, I'm asking you to make it really short because we're going to make a point of that when we get to the dance, of really
Okay.
paying attention to the notes that have the tenuto and the notes that have the staccato. All right. So your responsibility as a performer is to help the audience understand exactly what you see in your music. In other words, you can't just play eighth notes if you see an eighth note with a dot on it. You got to play an eighth note that has a dot, that sounds like it has a dot. And the same thing, if you have a tenuto line over it, the audience has to know that that eighth note sounds different from another eighth note. So can we go to the dance and show us when you have an eighth note with a tenuto and when you have a staccato? Good. That was much better. Except in bar 17, you're making that C long. You did that the first time too. So make a note to yourself there. Good. Now, you see that comma in parentheses there, right where
Yeah.
we stopped?
Yeah.
Um, it sounds like you're disregarding it. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Why? Because it's in parentheses?
Um, I felt that it's weird to take a breath there, even though because the phrase kind of carries over onto that eighth note in bar 19.
Uh, I agree with you 100%. It's really awkward to take a breath there. But I think that this is a comma that's put in by the composer, and that's not a breath. That's the opposite of a breath. So this is really tricky. When you're reading music, um, sometimes it's edited by someone, usually a flute player, and you always want to disregard those markings. But the composer's markings you always have to pay attention to. And the way a composer writes the sort of what I call it the anti-breath, the opposite of a breath, is by putting a comma, which is kind of weird because that's how flute players say to take a breath. But you see, it's that thing when a composer wants you to go that like a pause before something, it adds emphasis with tension. And that's without a breath because the breath relaxes. So you want to make that comma there, but without a breath. You want to take the time to have the tension in the space, but not actually breathe because that would release that tension. Okay,
Okay.
so see if you can do that just from bar 17.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. So we don't want to take time, right? Don't hold back. Just like the uh, um, a startled pause.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's what the composer wants when he puts a comma in. Okay, good. We don't have time to get really into details. So those are, in general, the things that you really need to address.
Okay.
The legato, the articulation, um, and everything else was really good. I don't have anything else super important to say other than bravo, congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. I hope I hear you next time I'm in California next summer.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Whoop. I can't hear you. And are you on? I can't hear you. Ah,
Can
there you
you
are.
can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
That is so weird. That's the first time it happened. Well, it's that's what happens, I guess. That's what happened to Samantha. She I think she had to leave and then enter, and that's what I did because for some reason our audio is stuck. Anyway, bravo, Samantha, sounded good. Our next performer is Nitin Chilakapati. Nitin, where are you? Nitin, meet Mr. Jeffrey Kaner.
Hi, Nathan. And Nathan, you're going to play Telemon? Oops. I can't hear him. Can you hear him, Hernan?
Uh, Nit, I can't hear you, Nitin. Nitin, can you hear us? Can you play something? I think everybody's probably having the same issue. Nitin, could you leave and then log back in? Um, Gabby, are you there? Gab, Gabby, can we hear you? Are you there, Nitin?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh,
Okay,
yes. Now,
great.
now I can
Okay.
hear you. Okay, this is weird. I guess everyone's going to have to log out and log
Yeah,
back in.
yeah. Okay, I'll leave you guys.
Okay.
Okay, Nathan, Telemon?
Yeah.
Cool. Good, bravo. I love your ornaments.
Thank you.
Are they your own?
Yeah, I worked on them with my teacher, but I worked on a lot of them by myself as well.
Great, good, very nice. You know, I like your tempos too, um, but at the beginning, I should say I liked your tempo by the time you got to the third and the fourth bar.
Okay.
But the first two bars were much slower.
Okay.
Can you think of the tempo that you're going to be playing in the
Yeah.
third, fourth, fifth bar and start that way? So, you know, it has largo in parentheses. Is it really?
Um, it should be like it says over there on top, like Overture à la Française, so like a French overture. So I think it
Yeah.
should be like the French overture tempo.
Which would be?
Uh, Maybe a little faster than Largo.
Yeah, you know, it's largo if you hear it in two.
Oh, okay.
So you're playing it in four, but if we should be hearing it in two. And the two is what makes us think it's slow and sort of grand.
Okay.
All right, but it's not a slow four. It's really a slow two. So we have to be careful. that we don't start too slow. I think you're thinking in 4 at the beginning, and your dotted quarter notes end up being much longer than you mean for them to be.
Okay.
So, bum, ba bum, ba bum, ba bum, bum, ba bum, ba bum. Can you do it at that tempo? Okay, good, good. This is better. The relationship is now better. But let me ask you this. That run in bar 4. Okay, starting from that low A and then going to the D in bar 5, what's the most important note?
Maybe the A at the top of the run.
Why?
Because it's like the peak of that like mini phrase.
Is it?
Or maybe like the D at the end, because that's where the phrase is leading to.
Is it?
Maybe the F sharp, because it's the downbeat.
You're running out of choices. But look, when you're playing a phrase, it's like speaking. It's like you're communicating, and you have to have the correct emphasis. Otherwise, the meaning changes. So you have to figure out with every phrase that you play what the focus is of the phrase, which note you should be emphasizing, leaning on, in order for it to sound the way the composer intends. So it's very tempting to always look for the highest note in the phrase and think that that must be the most important. But of course, that's not the case. Just because it's higher doesn't mean it's more important. Nor would the lowest note be more important just because it's lower. But the fact that a note is on the downbeat is a hint. It's probably going to be more important than a note that's on the 4th beat of a 4/4 bar, right? Because the 4th beat is usually the least important note, a beat in a 4/4 bar. So can you play that phrase, making the F sharp the focus of that little phrase? Okay, so once again, but don't hit the A so much and don't hit the D so much.
Okay.
But give me more F sharp. All right, and the same thing with the next one, going to the G sharp, not the B. That's right. Okay, this is what I have to understand when you're playing. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, going on from there, what's the most important note?
Maybe the A right before the triplet.
Okay. And then what will be the note after that?
The F sharp on the 3rd beat.
The F sharp on the 2nd beat?
Yeah.
Do you think so?
Oh wait, sorry, I meant the D on the 3rd beat.
Do you think so?
The B in the next measure, because that's like the downbeat.
You're great at hitting it on the 3rd try. But you need to think about this beforehand.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's the A, right? You have a motive. Then you have a sequence of it. So it would be the same shape. So every beat is not equal. One beat is more important than the other. And in this case, again, it's the downbeat because that's where the modulation happens. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens after that?
Then we hit like the F sharp at the top in measure 9.
Okay, if that's the case, if it's the F sharp, then what would be the note after that that's important?
Maybe uh, the F sharp in measure 10.
The low F sharp.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. So what we just did before, right? We pointed out the sequence. You had a motive and then it was a sequence.
Yeah.
So isn't that kind of what's going on here too?
Right.
It's a little disguised, but basically we have you see? So I need
Yeah.
the C sharp.
Okay.
Then the F sharp. And then I need the D, D sharp, E.
Right.
Okay, so what you have to do is to go through this carefully and really figure out exactly how to shape each phrase. So you find the motives like we did, and then the sequences, and follow the same phrasing in the sequences. Am I making sense? Do you understand?
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you confused about the words that I'm using?
No, I get it.
Okay, good. All right. Now, in the Allegro, it's actually really the same tempo,
Oh.
right? Because it's
Yeah.
ba bum ba bum ba bum yum ba bum 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 ba dum bum 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 ba ga da ga da ga da ga da ga da ga dum. It should really be the same tempo.
Okay.
So, and that was the point that I wanted to make. It's basically the same tempo. And then when you get to presto at the end, it actually is basically the same tempo,
Oh.
but it's 1 to a bar. So this happens in many of these Telemann fantasias. The beat in every different tempo change, they're not movements, they're just different sections with different characters. And they will often have a relationship within the tempo. Like a quarter note of the first tempo will be the eighth note of the second tempo, which will be the whole bar in the third tempo. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it.
So in this instance, it's basically, not exactly, I mean, because of course you can play with this, you have leeway, but in basically it's one beat all the way through. And at the beginning, the alla francese, the march, you hear it as very slow because it's half the tempo, because it's 2 beats. The audience feels like they're hearing only 1 beat, 2 in a bar. Whereas the allegro, it sounds like 1 beat, but it's in 3. Dum, bum, 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 dum, bum. And then the presto sounds presto because it's even faster than the allegro.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would have liked to hear you do the presto just a little bit faster in order to have that
Yeah.
relationship. So of course, we don't play metronomically, and we don't want to play like a machine, but that's the sort of relationship between the tempos that we should try to make clear. Okay.
Yeah.
There was just one other point that I wanted to make. You took very good breaths in the allegro. I think you chose very well, and except for one, and I was wondering if you did it on purpose or whether it was you did it out of sort of emergency. And that's the breath I'm talking about was in between bar 18 and bar 19.
Um, oh, like right before the 16th notes.
Exactly.
Uh,
Did you plan to take that?
yeah, I planned that as like a catch breath, and I ended up taking it.
Okay, so it's super good to know where your catch breaths can be, um, but that's not a good place.
Okay.
If you had taken it two notes before the A, I would have liked it better as a catch breath.
Okay.
So you see, I need the A G connected to the F sharp,
Yeah.
but I don't need the A connected to the E as importantly.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's great that you're preparing yourself for catch breaths, but um, you have to choose wisely. And in a sense, like we were talking about before, music is communicating. It's like speaking, and the breath that you took was like breathing in the middle of a word,
Oh, yeah.
right? In the middle of a word. It doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
You're perfectly allowed to breathe in the middle of a sentence. We all do, but you can't breathe in the middle of a word.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions about that?
Um, no, I think that's really helpful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Sounds great. And bravo again on your ornaments. I
Thank
really
you.
like them. Okay. All right. I hope I'll see you too next summer.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You think so? I love that. Oh, bravo, Nathan. Good job. Good job. Our next performer is Gaby Beltran. Gaby is a graduating senior who will be attending USC next year. Gaby, are you here? Gaby.
Hello? Can you
Oh,
hear
I
me?
hear you.
I
Uh,
can't start the video because it's saying unable to start video. Oh, okay, perfect. Sorry.
oh, there you go.
There
Oh,
you are.
Gaby, meet Mr. Kaner. I'll leave
Nice
you
to
Hi,
guys
meet
alone.
Gary.
you.
You're going to play Bozza.
Yes.
Okay. I don't think I'm going to let you get all the way through before stopping you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
It's a little longer.
It's a little longer, exactly. Okay, good, Gabby. Gabby, great, bravo, beautiful. Um, can we start at the beginning again? Um, you started with a nice, at least I think you started with a nice solid tone. Sometimes it's difficult to tell, like volume and dynamics and stuff over this medium, but it sounded good. Like you weren't playing it really shyly, which people often do. So good, good for that. But I did not understand your rhythms at the beginning. The relationships were not clear enough to me. I really want to hear six and then eight and then six.
Okay.
So can you do that? So your eight is not faster than your six.
Oh, okay.
Maybe play the first six not quite so fast, and then the eight just a little bit faster.
Okay.
Okay, good. The six and the eight were good, but then the last six was too fast.
Yeah, I heard that afterwards.
Okay, once again, my teacher always said to me, play it like you're giving dictation. Have you ever had to take dictation?
No.
So you're going to USC next year?
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to have theory class. And you're going to go in there and somebody's going to be up at the front playing the piano and you're going to have to write down what they're playing. And can you be the teacher that wants the student to pass?
Yeah.
In other words, you're going to play it so clear that the student is going to understand exactly what to write. And if you are too imaginative with your rhythms, it's going to be impossible for this poor student to get an A.
Okay.
So let's make sure we're clear enough that they really understand. Your audience they're not your students, but you want them to pass.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay, good, good, good. I'm sorry to get picky with you.
No, thank you.
Okay, so you have rubato. It says rubato.
Yes.
You're not really doing anything.
Okay.
And then, do you think there's an eighth note rest missing from the end of the line?
Where? Like.
At the
Oh,
very end
yeah.
of the line.
I could see that possibly.
Well, you're playing as though you do think it is missing, because
Okay.
you're adding that rest. And I think maybe some people think it is missing. Is what I see.
Yeah.
So maybe you're right. Maybe it's a misprint and there should be an eighth note rest there. But I think it's kind of nice to not have the eighth note rest there.
I like it too, actually.
And I also like to point out that the third one, the low one, is slow. But you played them all the same tempo. So he gives you room to play around with that because of that rubato. You can play those da-dee-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. And then the third one will sound slower than the first two.
Should I try playing that then? Or?
Yeah. Okay, going on. Okay, good, 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 very good. Um, I talked a little bit with Samantha about the commas that are in the music. So it's something you always have to think about when you see commas in printed music. Are they there by the composer or are they there by an editor? Composers don't write breath marks. Composers don't write technical instructions, they write musical instructions. And a breath mark is a musical instruction. Composers leave that up to the performer, but editors put in technical instructions. And but this piece I don't think is edited. I think the commas are put in by the composer. So I don't think they're breath marks.
Okay.
Um, so you don't have to treat them as breath marks. You don't have to take them. And sometimes it's better not to take them so that you can give that thing that we talked about, the anti-breath, that sort of tension when you're not breathing. Um, so, like, I wouldn't actually breathe down there. I just make it a phrase. But I would breathe in the bar before the E because there's lots of time and nobody's even going to notice.
Okay.
And then I would do the same thing. See, 2 lines down, there's a 9/8. You're taking a breath between those 2/16 notes. For me, that's a little awkward. I would breathe just before the B, you know, after the D at the beginning of the 9/8, because nobody's even going to notice.
Right.
And you got so much more time to do it. It's going to sound more natural. Okay, so think a little bit about that, about your breath marks. Um, okay, let's skip to the second page. That low B sharp.
Yes.
If you take a really good breath there, how far can you go without breathing? Do you think you could get all the way to the high A sharp?
I can try.
Okay,
Probably not. I can try.
let's try.
Okay.
Okay. Was that hard?
A little bit. Couldn't use as much dynamics, but I did kind of make it.
Gabby, you actually accomplished your goal the first time you tried. How hard could it be? Now, I understand it wasn't super easy, but you haven't practiced it, you haven't worked on it. But when something's hard, it takes months to get it, not the very first time. So the point I'm trying to make is when you see something like this, where there's no really good place to breathe, don't make a compromise until you practice. You may not even need a breath. So you compromised by not giving very much fermata and by playing really fast all the way from the beginning, which is great. That's fine. Now you can see how much you can extend yourself, how much you can make an accelerando. So it would be really great if you could have a controlled accelerando. You know?
Yeah.
So try that and forget the fermata. Let's take the fermata out. Just play it as a quarter note. Okay, okay, that's good. Your eighth notes are still too fast, though. So you need to practice it with your metronome. Da, da, dee, dum, baga, daga, 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 baga, daga, 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 dum. Right? That chromatic scale is just 3 beats. So you can do this with your metronome. Now, of course, while you're playing it slow, you're not going to do it in one breath. But as you get faster, you will. So you have to work on it a little bit with your metronome to be disciplined about it so that you can get a perfectly even accelerando.
Okay.
And then the breathing is going to work out for you. I promise.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Can we, because we're just about almost out of time, can we do, you know, after the cadenza thing where the più lento comes back,
Yes.
just like the end, so that we can finish?
Yeah.
Good, bravo. That's very good. What you need to accomplish more clearly here is the stringendo at the end, right? So that it gets super exciting. So you're on your way to doing that because you're playing it very rhythmically. It sounds like you practice it with your metronome.
Yes.
So that's great. But remember, when you practice with a metronome, don't only do it at one tempo, do it at all tempos, all around, so that you will have the freedom to make rubato,
Okay.
right? And that way you can practice getting faster and faster so that your accelerando can be natural and you can end with a huge flourish with that big scale up to the B. Okay?
Yeah.
Any questions?
What's like the best way to practice an accelerando?
The best way to practice an accelerando is, again, with your metronome. You play the whole thing slow, then you move it up notch by notch until you play the whole thing fast. But you have to remember, when you're using a metronome, every time you change the tempo, you have to change your thinking just a very little bit. So each time it goes like this, you change your thinking a little bit, which means that when you're starting really slow, you change your thinking to getting really fast. You've changed your thinking a lot. But when you understand all the little grades in between that you have to adjust, when you understand all of those, then you'll be able to do the accelerando perfectly. And then you'll also be able to do rubato, getting faster, getting slower. When you understand all those, the relationship between the notes at all of those different tempos on the metronome.
Thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, you have to really think about what you're doing when you're using the metronome. Don't just use it as a beat. It's more than that. It's helping you understand how to think at certain tempos.
Thank you.
Okay?
Really helpful.
You're welcome. I guess we have like a brief time for questions from everyone or from the audience.
Bravo, Gabby. Do we have any questions? I think the students have questions for you, Samantha, Nithin, and you didn't get a chance to ask. Yeah, Samantha, do you have any questions?
Hi, yeah. I guess my main question is, sometimes we have periods of time, maybe it's like a couple days or a week, where we're just not able to practice. How do you deal with the deterioration between your practices?
Ah, boy, that's a tough question. You know, um, practicing exercises is for me the way I keep in shape. And I've sort of gotten to the point where doing my exercises is kind of like brushing my teeth, so that I don't feel good unless I've done it. Um, so I seldom um, go any number of days without at least doing that. It's important to take time off. So I will, if I go on a vacation for a week or something, I won't take my flute. But if I have the flute around, I can always find 40 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour to just play exercises to keep in shape. And if you do that, then if there happens to be a day that you simply can't possibly play, it's okay. You're going to be you'll be fine. But for me, I find it important to really do that basic minimum, the exercises. Does that answer your question, sort of?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Nithin or Gabby, you have any more questions? Nithin.
Yeah. So recently I played the Telemann in a competition with a panel of 3 judges. 2 of the judges said that I should use less vibrato and that it should be used more as an ornament, whereas one judge said that it was wonderful. So I was wondering, what are your thoughts on using vibrato in Baroque music?
Um, Gosh, my thoughts are more about competitions than about vibrato after you ask that question. That's a reason I hate competitions. Um, I don't like them for that sort of reason. Um, okay, but that aside, to your question, my feeling is that vibrato, when Baroque musicians were talking about vibrato, they were talking about something that is much wider than what we talk about today. And in that sense, it was used as an ornament, but it was much, much more pronounced than we typically do it. Okay, that being said, well, in Baroque music, I think no matter what music I'm playing, I try to sing. And Baroque singers do not sing without vibrato. Like Bach is a great example. In the cantatas of Bach, you don't hear singers singing without vibrato. So if I'm playing the flute part to, the obligatos of the cantatas, I will vibrate the way the singers are vibrating. But you have to remember that vibrato always has to be appropriate. If it's too wide and it makes your tone wobbly, that's not good. But the answer isn't to just turn it off. The answer is to change the vibrato so that it's within the tone. I mean, typically your vibrato should always stay within the tone. If that's your tone, then your vibrato should be within the tone, not distorting the tone, either above or below or either way. It should be within the tone. So if you're playing loud, you can have a wider vibrato, but as soon as you start getting softer, you have to have a smaller vibrato. You have to be able to vibrate fast and slow, which means you have to practice it so that you can control the tempo. In the same way that a string player changes the rate of vibrato in order to change the intensity of the sound, to change the character of the tone. We have to do the same thing. We should be able to do the same thing. So it's important that you practice your vibrato so that you can vibrate appropriately to what you're playing, not only the style, but also the character of the music.
Thank you.
Mr. Kaner, I have a question. Being a string instructor, I've sort of I'm attracted to the modern music or 20th century, which I've introduced to a lot of the students, and I think there's interest with that. Is it the same for wind players or flute players? Do you work with a lot of modern pieces for your students as well?
Yes. Yeah, constantly.
Okay.
And I mean, just concerning vibrato, of course, that's completely different in repertoire
Right.
because you're often called upon to play without vibrato because it's a whole new repertoire of sounds that we're making, and especially on the flute, where you can make. It's funny, I'm just sort of haphazardly thinking. You can make so many weird sounds, probably more than string players can.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
Yeah.
the only thing we can do more than string players. String players can do everything better than we can, but we can make funny sounds more. Um, so we got something. And composers, especially flute playing composers, will go for all of those effects.
Yes, yes.
And you got to be able to do all of that sort of stuff.
Right. And do your students have interest with all these new music or?
I've had some students that are vastly more interested in it than I am,
Oh, wow.
and who know how to play it much better than I do.
Oh,
It's like technology sometimes. The younger ones know how to do things better than I
right.
do. And I've had some extraordinary students that were absolutely phenomenal at playing super contemporary music that I can't even dream of playing.
Wow. Yeah. Uh, Gabby, are you here? Gabby, you're still here with us, right? We have one question. It says, why does Gabriella's flute click when she plays? Is it a mechanical issue or is it just a sound issue?
It,
Gabby, are you there?
I think it's a sound issue. I
Oh,
think
okay.
because I didn't hear anything when I was playing, but yeah.
it could be that the flute was close to the microphone.
That's true.
I mean, it could be sometimes if it's humid, pads get a little sticky.
Right.
Sometimes keys need to be adjusted. They may be a little noisy. Sometimes it's the type of pad that you're using. Some pads are louder than other pads. And if you're close, you can actually hear the action of the pads.
Oh, that's it. That's good to know.
You
And
think you think so?
Well, the old-fashioned felt pads are much quieter, actually, than like the new pads that many of the flute makers use, which are actually can be quite noisy.
thank
Gabby,
you.
do you have any questions for Mr. Kaner?
I think I'm just gonna ask this. What is something that you look for when you are auditioning, when you hear someone for the first time, or when you're listening to people's performance? How do you, like,
You know, I have to say, I listen very differently to someone depending on the circumstances. I mean, if I'm just at a concert, or if I'm listening to an audition for a student, or if I'm listening to an audition for a colleague, or if I'm listening to a competition, which I haven't done in many years. I dislike competitions so much that I don't judge them anymore. But you know, and all of those things, listening to those things is different from the way I listen to someone as a teacher. So if I'm listening to a student, I'm listening primarily for potential. Someone who's auditioning to be a student, I'm listening for potential. If I'm listening to a student, I'm listening for everything that needs to be better. If I'm listening to a concert, I'm listening to everything that I like. So I approach these things differently, subconsciously. Not, I don't actually think, okay, this is how I'm going to listen to this. But this is why it's hard, and I try not to confuse those things. For example, for auditions for colleagues in my orchestra, if I'm listening to the audition, I will never give comments because I don't think it's appropriate for me as a colleague to be critiquing someone who would be sitting next to me. That's not my job. So at an audition for a colleague, I listen for what I like, for what, and for what I think is going to fit with the orchestra, and for what inspires me, for what, makes me excited. But that will be completely different from how I'd listen to an audition for someone, who is auditioning for school, or if I was just going to a concert to listen to someone play. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Probably more complicated than you wanted.
Well, it's been a great class. I've enjoyed it very much. Mr. Kainer, thank you so much for your time. And bravo to our three performers. I'm sure everyone applauds. And I hope to see you again in person, hopefully. Are you scheduled to come back here in October or next spring or something?
I am not scheduled now because my schedule is totally up in the air with the orchestra.
I know. Ours too. Any plans for a restart for Philly?
Not yet.
Yeah, I know. We have a new shell that we're supposed to open this summer, but now it's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, so hopefully some positive news in the next coming weeks. So.
Yes. So let me say that thank you, all the three of you guys that played. I know it's so difficult to do this. It's not easy at all to play at a masterclass situation. So bravo to you all. Thank you for playing. Thank you to mainly Mozart for putting this together. Thank you, Hernan, for hosting this, for moderating.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks to everyone else that put it together.
All right. So we'll leave here and we'll see you again, everyone. Bye.
Bye.